Good evening. Hope you're having a great week. It is Saturday, June 7th, 7:47 p.m. Mountain Daylight Time, local time here in, I think we're in Ogden, Utah, or close to it. I'm on Interstate 84 westbound and also 15 northbound on the north side of Salt Lake City, heading to the state of Washington. I have a fuel stop in Snowville, Utah, which is right on the border of Idaho. So a couple of miles from Idaho, I'm going to be topping off fuel. That's 62 miles away. I think I'll record until I get to the fuel stop. So we'll record until we get to the fuel stop, and sorry, there's a huge pack of cars overtaking me right now. So let's talk about the video log stuff. What's going on with me? What happened since the last video? And then maybe we will rant and rave about something. I don't know. I don't edit, and I don't have a script or anything. It's all improvisation. So the last video, I was going over this load. I'd booked the load, and I was talking about it. And I sat around for a week until the load needed to be picked up. The load didn't pick up for a week. So I ended up leaving the house Thursday evening. Oklahoma City is where I live. Drove down from Oklahoma City to Dallas, Lewisville, Texas, picked this load up. Drove it to Memphis, Texas, to the Love's truck stop. Took a 10-hour break there. And then drove from Memphis, Texas to a truck parking area about 20 miles west of Cheyenne, Wyoming, and took another 10-hour break. And that's where I started driving today, was that truck parking area about 20 miles west of Cheyenne. And there's a rest area just past the Jerome, Twin Falls, Idaho area on 84. That's where I plan on stopping at the end of this drive shift. So I've got 60 miles until my fuel stop, and then I'm going to take my 30-minute break while I get fuel, and then I've got 3 hours of driving after that, and that will be the end of the drive shift. Now my next drive shift on Sunday will be my last drive shift before my delivery. Well, maybe, I don't know. I'm not sure if I'm going to go to the delivery location or close to it, or if I'm going to stop like 100 miles short. I haven't figured that out yet. I'll have to figure that out at the end of this drive shift. I'll have to see if I can find some place to park near the receiver. So there was a bit of drama that happened picking the load up. We'll talk about that real quick. The Ream warehouse in Lewisville is just incredibly busy, and it's not big enough for their needs. So they are parking trailers in places they are not supposed to be parking trailers. They're parking trailers in car parking spots and stuff like that. And it's just a really, really tight place. You cannot do a U-turn in the parking lot. If you need to turn around, then you're going to have to find a spot to back into to turn around. That's how tight the place is. And I had to turn around twice. So aside from that, there was a little tiny bit of drama with the security people. There were two security people. One of them, no issues. She was cool. The other one, she did not want to be at work. She was sick, and she wanted everybody to hear about it. So I had to sit there and listen to her whine about that. And I had to spend about 15 minutes filling out a lot of unnecessary paperwork. Gate passes and multiple copies of the bills of lading, and they had all kinds of stuff that they wanted me to fill out on each one of them. It was annoying. But that was just a minor nuisance. The main drama was with some trucking company. HP, I've never heard of them before. It's not Hewlett Packard. Some company that had HP on their trucks. All right. I'm watching we're coming up on a way station. I've already gone through a way station in Utah. Hopefully I don't have to go through another one. Hopefully this one's closed, or I get the bypass, one or the other. I just got the bypass, which means that it's probably closed because Landstar's CSA score sucks. So I hardly ever get bypassed. Yeah, port of entry open when flashing, and it is not flashing, so it's closed. I wish Landstar's CSA score didn't suck. It'd be nice to get bypassed on open way stations. So yeah, the big drama was with this HP trucking company. I interacted with several of their drivers. None of them spoke English. I'm guessing that they were speaking Spanish, but for all I know, it could have been Portuguese. But the issues I had with them is that they were not obeying any of the rules. They weren't following the speed limit. They were parking in areas they weren't supposed to park. There was just like zero etiquette whatsoever. Like, there's certain driver etiquette things. Like, if you're going to be backing into something and you're going to be blocking the road for a while, let the other drivers pass by before you block the road. Don't pull out in front of somebody to spend 15 minutes backing into a spot. Let the other person drive by. Little etiquette things like that. There was zero etiquette with these drivers. They were extremely rude, blocking roads, parking in places they shouldn't have been. The biggest issue I had with them was trying to leave the property. The roadway in between the warehouses to get in and out of the warehouses, there was like 6 HP drivers that were parked along the curb taking their 10-hour breaks. And they turned it into a single lane road. Well, I was trying to leave on that single lane road, and 2 more HP drivers pulled in off of the main street onto that single lane road, drove right up to me, stopped right in front of my truck, and started honking their horns at me. That goes into the driver etiquette. If you are traversing a single lane road and there is opposing traffic already in that single lane road, then you wait for them to clear before you pull into it. It took us about 15 minutes to get through that obstacle. What ended up happening was some of the HP trucks that were parked along the curb moved their trucks closer to the curb, and then we were able to fit side by side. It was no longer single lane. It was a really, really, really tight 2-lane. And then, right after I made it out of that single lane, tight 2-lane, I got to the exit, and 2 more HP drivers go to pull into the place, and they misjudged the turn to get in there, and the driver just ended up pulling right in front of my truck and then putting his hands out like, "You're in my way." Are you serious? That's another driver etiquette thing. If you're pulling into a spot, if you're like pulling into a roadway and you can't make the turn because another truck is there, let them turn out before you turn in. But these HP drivers appear to be driving around in pairs because they pulled in two at a time again. And the person that misjudged the turn that pulled in front of me couldn't back up to let me out because the driver behind them was right on their ass. So I ended up having to back up to let these idiots in. And then after they got in, then I was able to pull out. It was so annoying. I spent probably 20 minutes just trying to leave the warehouse because of these HP drivers. It was very frustrating. But the trailer that I picked up did not need to go into the shop, so I didn't have to spend a day or two in the shop, so that's a big bonus. No issues with the trailer. You know, lights, tires, mud flaps, all good. Paperwork, all good. I don't do very, thorough inspections on equipment, but apparently my really terrible inspection is better than most drivers out there because I almost always have to put trailers in the shop when I do a drop and hook. And pretty much all I check is lights, tires, mud flap. And then on the paperwork, whenever I first pick up a trailer, that's the only time, the paperwork's not going to change while I have the trailer. So I just check paperwork when I initially pick it up. And what I check on the paperwork is I check the registration and I make sure that the VIN number and the license plate number match the registration. I make sure it's got a good DOT inspection, and I make sure that the DOT inspection, if there is DOT paperwork, that it has the correct VIN number, license plate on it. You'd be surprised. I have actually picked up a trailer that had registration for a completely different trailer. Different VIN number, plate number, trailer number. Everything was different on the registration. It just had the wrong registration on it. And I have picked up a trailer that had a different plate number than what was on the registration. The trailer number and the VIN number matched, but the plate number was different. And what had happened was the license plate, something happened to the license plate and they had to replace it. And whenever they did that, they didn't put the new registration paperwork in. So, yeah, those are the things that I check. I don't crawl underneath the trailer and measure brake pad, thickness and stuff like that. So this thing could have no brakes for all I know. But anyway, that's the only drama. The rest of the drive, the rest of everything's been pretty good. I did figure out why that truck parking area 20 miles west of Cheyenne is so overrun all the time, why it's full all the time. There is a Walmart distribution center 10 miles east. I thought that was probably the reason, was there was some kind of distribution center nearby. And I had seen a big, complex of some kind, but I'd never been able to see what the sign was of what the place was. It's not really easy to see from the interstate. But this time when I drove by it, I saw the Walmart sign. So in the future, I'm going to try to avoid that truck parking area. There's another rest area that's almost full, over half full. And that looks like a rest area I've parked at before. I probably have. We are getting into the evening. It is, let's see, what time is it? Let me try to block the sun here. 8:01 p.m. This is around the time when a lot of people start shutting down. But all day today, every truck parking area, rest area, truck stop that I've looked at has been half full or full. There are a lot of trucks on 80 and now I'm seeing, a lot of trucks on 84 as well. But I-80 across Wyoming was just tons and tons of trucks. So we're pretty much caught up on the video logging. One last thing we'll talk about on the video logging is, what are my plans after I deliver the load? I've got 2 drops in the Pasco, Washington area, and then a final in Wenatchee, Washington, which I think is like 100 miles north of Pasco. So 2 deliveries Monday, 1 delivery Tuesday. I'm not really sure what I'm going to do after the final delivery in Wenatchee. I've been hoping that I'm able to book a load. So that I don't have to guess on which direction to go. But the only load alerts that I've gotten are for the ROR agency in, I can't remember, Stanton, Oregon or something like that. Quite a ways away. And it's those like 37 stop loads. And I think I've been told that those are the cabinet loads. I'm not doing a 37 drop load. Maybe if it paid like $15 a mile, yes, I would consider doing a 37 stop cabinet load. But for the like $2.85 a mile or whatever the hell they're paying, there's not a chance in hell I'm touching that crap. So we'll keep waiting and see if we get a load between now and the last delivery. If I don't book a load by then I will, I talked about this in the video where I talked about the load. I'm most likely going to deadhead to a Pilot Flying J on I-90 that is south of Wenatchee. I don't know how far away it is. I think it's like 60 or 70 miles away. There is a small truck stop in Wenatchee, but I don't want to be spending money for showers if I have shower credits. Maybe if showers were still like $8 or $10, then yeah, I would just stay at that mom and pop truck stop and pay for showers. But now that showers are like $20, nah. $20 for a shower is a lot of money. The price has gone up and the quality has gone down on just about everything. Just a second here. It looks, are they taking the exit? Okay, yeah, they're taking the exit. There's a RV pickup hauling a camper. I couldn't tell if they were pulling off onto the shoulder or taking the exit. So you're pretty much caught up with what's going on with me. Now we get to rant and rave about whatever. Well, let's talk about a few things going on in the world, and maybe I'll figure out something to rant and rave about while we're talking about, oh my goodness, skunk. Oh, that's potent. Let me roll the window down. You would think rolling the window down I'd get more skunk smell in the truck, but what ends up happening when you drive past some nasty smell is you just capture it inside the truck, and it'll linger in the truck for a long time. But if you roll the window down, you can get it back out. Yeah, it smells died down now. So what's going on in the world? Well, a lot. So this is not recent news. This is something that happened, I don't know how long ago, a month or more ago. China surrounded Taiwan. Now, what's really terrifying about this is, like, China has been doing military drills around Taiwan for years. It's intimidation. They're also trying to set like a new normal. They're trying to normalize their military, being around Taiwan. That way, whenever they attack, Taiwan isn't going to know if it's a military drill or an attack. So them doing military drills around Taiwan serves many purposes, not just training their military for an invasion of Taiwan. But they did one of these military drills. They surrounded Taiwan, and they did not tell anybody it was a military drill. Normally, countries will give advance notice of several months, sometimes even years of notice on military drills, so that there isn't any miscommunication, so that it doesn't provoke a conflict. Here's a second here. This Penske rental must be way overloaded or just have a gutless engine, because we went over a tiny little nothing and they dropped a lot of speed. And they blocked a lot of traffic passing me. I would have slowed down to let them over, but I've got people a couple inches off my bumper. And they were going by me really fast until we hit that little hill. Second here. There's just a lot of traffic behind me, passing me right now. I hate it when somebody gets out there and blocks traffic and causes a bunch of congestion like this around me. So yeah, China surrounded Taiwan, and Taiwan and militaries around the world thought that China was invading Taiwan because China didn't tell anybody they were doing a military drill. And then after they surrounded Taiwan, then they told everybody they were doing a military drill. Our militaries don't tell us how close they come to firing nuclear weapons or launching an attack. That is not something that they relay to the public. Maybe several years from now, something might become declassified, like the Cuban Missile Crisis. I don't think people at the time knew how close to nuclear war we came during the Cuban Missile Crisis. I think it was after the fact, years later, that we found out how big of a deal that was. So that was a really, really big deal of China surrounding Taiwan and not telling anybody that there was a military drill until after it happened. I don't know how close we came to war, but that's part of China's strategy. They're trying to normalize that behavior so that whenever they actually do it, everybody's going to be confused. Is this a drill or are they really attacking? And I hope you can see there are so many bugs on the window, and the sun is so bright, glaring off of all the bugs on the window. I can barely see. I'll get the thing washed whenever I get to the truck stop. Whenever I'm getting fuel, I'll get the windows all cleaned up. What's another big news event? Another war issue, Russia and Ukraine. So Russia bombed Kyiv, which used to be called Kiev. Ukraine renamed Kiev to Kyiv as an FU to Russia. So it's technically called Kyiv now. Russians probably still refer to it as Kiev. And a lot of people know it as Kiev, so you are constantly hearing people pronounce it as Kiev. But I think the proper pronunciation of it is now Kyiv. But Russia bombed Kyiv. I don't remember what the scale of the bombing was. Ukraine made a big deal about it. And then Ukraine launched an attack on Russia. It's something that they'd supposedly been planning for a year and a half. They had hired people to drive these trailers. I'm not sure what kind of vehicle it was exactly, if it was a box truck or a truck with a trailer or what it was. But they hired people to drive these trailers to places in Russia, and then these drones came out. A second here. This truck on the on-ramp looks like it's pulling over onto the shoulder. Is it getting onto the interstate? Yeah, it does look like it's getting on the interstate. But I don't know all of the details about the attack, but last I heard, 41 bombers, 41 planes were damaged or destroyed. Just a second, I'm trying to judge the speed of this vehicle that merged on in front of me. And I'm driving straight into the sun. I can barely see. And I'm watching traffic behind me to see if I have an opportunity to get out and around them. And this person is taking forever to get up to speed, so we're going to go around them. And then they can figure out how fast they want to go. And they can pass me if they want to go faster than me. So this was a really big attack. It wasn't using, big, expensive, fancy munitions or anything. This was like a terrorist style attack using, drones, cheap munitions. Now, what is really big about the attack are two things. Number one is they attacked planes up to 2,500 miles from Ukraine. This was deep into Russia. This was not close to where they're fighting the war at over in Ukraine. So this has one of the things that you keep hearing about is Ukraine is always asking for permission to attack deeper into Russia. They want longer range missiles and stuff like that to be able to attack deeper into Russia. And NATO keeps refusing to allow that. So this is a way for them to attack really deep into Russia by using drones. And supposedly the United States or NATO had no knowledge of this attack. I doubt that. But it gives deniability. But that was number one really big thing with this attack was how far into Russia it was, how far away from the front lines, 2,500 miles into Russia. That is going to panic a lot of Russians. That's going to, that just put almost all of Russia within the possibility of being attacked. People act very different whenever they think it's going to directly affect them. People in the United States don't really care much about the wars that we fight because, we haven't had a war in a long time that's been fought on U.S. territory. So people in this country feel insulated from warfare. So they are, supportive of going and, having war in other countries or supporting wars in other countries, like the Ukraine war. Lots of people are, very supportive of Ukraine fighting against Russia. They're very much in support of the Russia-Ukraine war. They want us to keep supporting the war, keep providing munitions, all that good stuff. They would have a different opinion if they were directly impacted by that war, if they had the threat of losing their life because of that war. They would have a different opinion. So that's number one big thing is how far into Russia. Number two big thing is what they attacked. They attacked a lot of bombers. The Tu-95 is one of the bombers I heard mentioned, which is the primary bomber for Russia's nuclear fleet. So we all have nuclear triads. All of the major nuclear powers have nuclear triads, sea, air, land. We have sea-based nuclear missiles, we have land-based nuclear missiles, and we have air-based nuclear missiles. Those Tu-95s are part of Russia's nuclear triad. Do you have any idea how big of a deal it is to attack a nuclear power's nuclear triad? That is a massive, massive escalation. Could you imagine if some country bombed our, missile silos in North Dakota, our nuclear missile silos in North Dakota? Do you have any idea how much that would panic the Department of Defense? They would start talking about preemptive attacks. We're vulnerable right now. We need to do a preemptive attack. Those conversations are probably happening. I'm quite pissed off. I am not, in support of Ukraine. I think Ukraine is in the wrong in this war. I think Russia was justified in attacking Ukraine. But this really pisses me off with Ukraine attacking their strategic nuclear bombers, because this doesn't really serve much purpose in their war tactically, but strategically, I think the reason Ukraine did it was to try to escalate the war to bring NATO in. Ukraine is not just running out of munitions, they're running out of people. They don't have enough people to fight the war. They are fighting a World War I style trench warfare, and that is a meat grinder. That is high attrition warfare. Ukraine is running out of people. They have been begging NATO to give them troops. They appreciate that we're giving them weapons, but they don't have enough people. They need people. So they have been begging NATO to put troops on the ground. And I think this is, and they've done several escalatory things to try to bring NATO in. And I think this is another attempt by Ukraine to bring NATO into the war. Just a second. Driving straight into the sun. All right, now the mountain's going to block the sun for a few seconds. Nice. Well, we got 24 miles to go and 40 minutes of drive time. So I've got 16 minutes of spare time. Yay. Striking Russia's nuclear triad, I don't know what percentage of their strategic nuclear bombers that Ukraine took out. But I think people have this idea that countries like the United States and Russia have like tens of thousands of planes. And that's just not the case. Like, I was talking with a buddy of mine. We were having some discussion about I think we were talking about us going to war with China, and I was telling him that we do not have a technological advantage over China anymore. And he was talking about how awesome the F-22 is, and it's still the best plane in the world. And I was like, well, even if it is better than anything China has, we have hardly any of them. And he was like, what are you talking about? I was like, I think there were only like 200 or 400 of them produced. Like, we could lose 100 of them in a day of a war with China. Like, those really advanced weapon systems that we have them in extremely limited number. They would be almost worthless in a major conflict with a peer adversary. And China and Russia are not, well, at least China, they're not near peer adversaries anymore. They are full peer adversaries. People still keep using the term near peer. They're not near peer adversaries. I've heard generals give talks and say that they're not near peer adversaries anymore. They are peer adversaries. But my buddy was like, no, we've got like thousands of those F-22s. This is somebody who is a contractor. He used to, I'm not sure if he still does, but he used to be a contractor at a military base. And he was like, oh, I worked at a military base. I know this. We have thousands of those. And I was like, I don't think that's true. I think we've only got like 200 to 400 of them. But, I relented because he's supposedly the expert. He works at a military base. But after that conversation, I looked it up and I was right. We've only got like 200 to 400. I forget the exact number, but I want to say it was like only like 400 F-22s were ever made. So we have way fewer of the weapon systems than most people imagine that we have. So taking out 40 of Russia's bombers, to the average person, that's probably an insignificant number. It's just like a little punch on the arm. But who knows? Maybe they only have 80 Tu-95 bombers in their entire fleet, and they just took out 30 of them. That is significant. So it is a massive escalation. One other thing on it that I want to say is I've been seeing a lot of headlines claiming that Ukraine's drone attack on Russia's air bases is Russia's Pearl Harbor. That is Anybody who's perpetuating that nonsense has no idea what they're talking about. It is absolutely nothing like Pearl Harbor. It is incomparable to Pearl Harbor. The size of the attack is incomparable. The type of attack is incomparable. Pearl Harbor was a preemptive attack by Japan on the United States to take out their Pacific fleet in one single blow, because Japan feared that the United States would enter the war, so they wanted to take out their ability to fight in the Pacific before they entered the war. We were not at war with anyone when Japan attacked Pearl Harbor. And people in the United States did not want to get into World War II because they still remembered World War I. They didn't want to get over there and get involved in another European war and lose, millions of American lives fighting somebody else's war. Pearl Harbor was an attack, a preemptive attack that brought a country into war. It was a declaration of war on a country. Russia and Ukraine are already at war. This is just another attack in an ongoing war. It's a big attack, but it is incomparable to Pearl Harbor. There's nothing about it that makes it similar to Pearl Harbor in any way. I cannot believe how many headlines I've seen calling it Russia's Pearl Harbor. Those are people that are trying to escalate the war. Those are warmongers that are creating those headlines. They're trying to stir emotion. They're trying to get people pissed off. It was significant, but it was nothing like Pearl Harbor. Just a second here. I got a four-wheeler in front of me with their hazard lights on, their emergency flashers. People have this idea that, if your car is illegal to drive, that it's legal to drive it down the road as long as you have the emergency flashers on. And that's just not true. You're not supposed to drive down the road with your emergency flashers on. If you feel the need to have your emergency flashers on, then you should be pulling to the emergency lane, the shoulder. This second here, I've got about a mile between me and the next vehicle. I'm going to speed up to 70 and get around this four-wheeler before vehicles catch up with me. There's nobody for a mile, but these four-wheelers drive so fast that by the time I finish this pass, they could have caught up with me. All right, we're around them. 15 miles until Snowville. I am still hoping that we have a miniature freight boom. There is a lot of stuff going on in China's economy, so I don't know. There's a lot of things to take in. Before we talk about that, something else just popped into my head. Let's cover it real quick. The big headline of the last few days is Elon Musk and Donald Trump feuding. They've apparently broken up. Now, I think I need to make it clear that I am not a big supporter of Donald Trump or Elon Musk or Joe Biden, or any of them. I think Donald Trump is one of the best presidents we've had in my lifetime, but I don't consider myself a Trump supporter. If I had to vote, I would have voted for Trump, just because the other options were so bad. But I do think Trump is doing a lot of good things for the country. There's a lot of issues that these career politicians didn't want to take on because they're so corrupt, and Trump is taking on those issues. So just want to make it clear where I stand. I don't consider myself a Democrat or a Republican. I am registered Republican. I am a very conservative person, but my ideas, they don't align with any political party. So what's going on with the Trump-Elon feud? Well, supposedly what started it all was Trump's budget bill. And Elon got pissed off. Now, this is what I've heard. He got pissed off because they were cutting like some electric vehicle subsidies or something to do with electric vehicles. They were cutting government spending on electric vehicles. And Elon Musk is heavily invested into electric vehicles, and that is supposedly what triggered all of this. And I believe that, because there was another issue that I recall Elon Musk having a little temper tantrum over, and it was work visas, which is an issue that we need resolved. Trucking has a huge problem with unnecessary work visas. I don't want to spend an hour ranting and raving about that, but work visas are abused to bring in unskilled labor. And there are a lot of industries that abuse work visas just so that they can keep labor costs down. They use it to suppress labor costs. Like in trucking, work visas are used to suppress labor cost. That's the reason the American Truckers Association keeps this constant myth of a trucker shortage going, so they can get more work visas and more subsidies and more all this stuff. Sorry, it's all right. The sun is dipping down behind the mountain. I was trying to see. It's really hard to see with the sun right in my eyes. But Elon Musk, whenever the Trump administration started talking about reducing work visas, Elon Musk relies heavily on work visas with his companies. And he freaked out. It's my opinion on work visas is I'm not for completely shutting down work visas. I am perfectly in favor of, supporting work visas if they are used appropriately to bring in labor that we cannot find in the United States. So, like, if you need somebody that has a doctorate level education in something and you cannot find enough of those people in the United States, then by all means, work visas, bring them in from another country. But to bring in general laborers or low-skilled laborers, which I consider trucking to be a low-skilled labor job. If you can teach somebody to do the job in 3 months, you don't need to be importing workers to do that. If the job requires several years of education and experience, then I can see a work visa for that. But things like trucking, there is zero excuse for having work visas for trucking. And Elon Musk threw a little temper tantrum when he thought he was going to lose his work visas. So yeah, he's there are some really dumb ideas that Elon has. Like, he has this idea that the world is underpopulated and we need to be breeding like crazy. That is the opposite. Like, the world is extremely overpopulated, and we can't keep going at this pace of population. We're going to use up all of our resources. We're going to kill off all of, the other plants and animals on the planet. Like, we've been going through a mass extinction event that's man-made since our population boom. Like for the last few hundred to few thousand years, many species on this planet have died off because of our overpopulation. We are, just a second here, I can barely see. We are like a virus. We're like a plague on this planet. And we are an extremely destructive species. The only way that this planet and life on it lasts for a long time is if we have manageable numbers of human beings, because we are so bad for this planet. But yeah, there's a bunch of dumb things that Elon thinks that I disagree with. And I don't agree with everything with Trump. People seem to forget that Trump and Elon are both Democrats. They're moderate Democrats that, because the Democrat Party was taken over by radicals and it's become a cult of radical left lunacy, a lot of the moderate Democrats have become Republicans because Republicans are still fairly moderate. The left has just gone crazy town left. So I don't agree. I'm a very conservative person, so I definitely do not agree with everything that Elon and Donald want to do because they are Democrats. I don't understand why the Democrats are so opposed to them, because they're both Democrats. They're moderate Democrats. I mean, that shows you how crazy left the Democrats have gone. Whenever they're opposed to moderate Democrats, like they hate moderate Democrats. Seven miles to go. Oh my goodness, this sun is just ridiculous. By the time I finish fueling up, the sun should be down, so I've only got like 10 more minutes to deal with this crap. So yeah, the big feud between Trump and Elon, who knows? I've heard Elon does a lot of drugs. I think there was some news report saying that Donald Trump or somebody made some comment about Elon always being high on ketamine. So he has irrational behavior. I don't even know what in the hell ketamine is or what the effects of it are. But there's a lot of stuff going on in the world, and we don't have much time. Let's spend the last few minutes talking about China. Let me see what exit number it is. It's exit 7. 7 miles from Idaho. So China's economy has been bad for a few years. And China has state-run media. The United States has state-run media. Stop pretending that we don't. Why is Chinese media called state-run media? Because the Chinese Communist Party, the political party in power in China, controls the media in China. Who controls the media in the United States? The Democrat and Republican parties. The two parties that control the United States. The two parties in power in the United States control the majority of the media in the United States. The only place where you can get real news these days is like social media. And that's the same place where you get real news in China, is social media, because everything else is controlled by the political party. But China is much better at locking down. They're much more aggressive at locking down news So it's really hard to get news out of China as to what's actually going on. But for the last couple of years, the economy in China has been really bad. They had a major housing crisis that the government has been trying to hide, and they've been, dumping money into it, doing all kinds of things to try to make that problem go away. And there are just a lot of issues with China's economy. I don't think many people realize how bad China's economy is because of how hard it is to get news out of China. But these high tariffs that we had on China for like a month, it wasn't very long. It was maybe like a month. I think that might be the straw that broke the camel's back with China and their economy. We'll have to wait and see. There's been a huge ripple effect. I've heard over 10 million people lost their jobs the day after those tariffs were announced. I saw a lot of social media posts reported about people that showed up for work the next day, and there were signs telling them to stay home for the next month. They were like getting messages through WeChat or whatever telling them not to come to work for a couple weeks or a month. So I believe 10 million or more people lost their job the day after those tariffs were announced. And there were a lot of businesses that went bankrupt. A big problem in China, and it's not new. It's been happening for a few years, but sorry, I can't see anything. I got an exit coming up in a mile. Snowville, next two exits. Chinese workers, factory workers, are paid next to nothing. And there's a huge problem in China of factories not paying workers. Like workers going months without pay. And workers have been burning down factories in retaliation because like China doesn't have the same labor laws we have. It's really hard to get paid if an employer doesn't pay you in China. You don't have the same kind of protections you have in somewhere like the United States. So what a common thing in China, since they don't have the same recourse as we have in the United States on a lot of things, is you have vengeance attacks. Like if I can't get my money and I can't, or whatever, then, or if I get wrongfully terminated, if you don't have any recourse, then they just want revenge. And I've talked about this before. That's something that other countries don't seem to understand are Chinese vengeance attacks. Like there was an attack, I think it was in Australia. Some Chinese man just walked up and poured hot coffee on a baby. And people did not understand why he did that. Like it was a completely an anonymous attack. Turn right, then turn right. It looks like the fuel island is backed up. I'm going to let this four-wheeler out. Are these people even fueling, or are they just camped out at the damn fuel island? All right, looks like there's a fuel lane open. Amazon is pulling over into that open fuel lane. All right, it looks like the people in this lane are pulling forward. Oh, great. This guy's just now starting to fuel. All right, we're going to go ahead and switch over to on-duty fueling. Hopefully I picked the correct lane. But let me wrap up this video. There's probably a few things that I can do while I'm waiting here. A lot of these people are not fueling. This really annoys me. Well, looks like I'm not going to have any issues taking my 30-minute break at the fuel island. Looks like I'm probably going to be here for an hour. Let me wrap this up. I forget what I was even talking about. What was I talking about? Elon and Trump, and I don't remember. I apologize if I didn't finish what I was saying, but I'm going to wrap up this video, started uploading, and then I'm going to try to remember what all I need to do while I'm at my fuel stop here. I need to put in biocide into the fuel tanks, wash the windows, and I can't remember what else. This person is just now starting to fuel. These people are just like taking their sweet time. The line is backed out to the road. So anyway, hope you're having a great weekend, and hopefully I'll be out of here within the next 30 to 45 minutes and be back on the road. And I've got 150 miles to go until I get to the rest area. And I have 3 hours and 15 minutes of drive time left, so that should be plenty. And hopefully I find a parking spot at the rest area. So have a good one. Bye.